Alright, so here's a question you might not have realized you should be asking. How accurate are those big jobs numbers that get splashed across the news every month? You know, the headlines like, the US added 187,000 jobs last month. Sounds decisive, right? But here's the thing. Those numbers? They're almost always revised, sometimes by a lot. Let's break this down. Every month, the government surveys businesses, does a bunch of math, and comes up with an estimate for how many jobs were created or lost. Some companies don't report in time, some numbers get adjusted, and the government updates its figures as more information comes in. That's called a revision. Now here's where it gets interesting. Lately these revisions have almost always been downward. So, the first headline number comes out, the markets react, maybe the Fed pays attention, and then a month or two later the government goes, actually that number was a bit too rosy, and it gets quietly adjusted down. In fact, over the past year, job growth numbers have ended up being revised down by more than 500,000 jobs. That's a big deal. It means the economy might not be quite as strong as those initial headlines suggested. And for folks making big decisions, like the Federal Reserve, which sets interest rates based on how hot or cool the job market looks, this really matters. So why are these revisions happening more than usual right now? It turns out, after a wild few years with the pandemic layoffs and job switching, the economy's just harder to measure. Some businesses are slow to report, others have disappeared, and work from home has scrambled the old patterns. The result? The first numbers are more like a rough draft than a finished product. So, what does this mean for you? Well, next time you see a big jobs report in the news, remember, it's just the first word, not the final answer. The real story about the economy often emerges weeks or months later, after the data gets revised. If you want to know how the job market is really doing, look for those revisions and the trends over time, not just the first headline number, because when it comes to the economy, the truth is always a bit more complicated than the hype. Alright, that's it for today. If you learned something new, hit that like button and subscribe for more explainers just like this. See you next time.